Really?
Well, I already started it, so
Oop,
all right.
better
Three.
change my audio source.
Is everyone
Almost
ready?
had my webcam recording the episode.
Oh gosh.
That wouldn't have been good.
Is everyone ready?
Yes.
3,
Yes.
2, 1, record. Well, fans of the show, listeners who happen to listen on YouTube, which I would consider to be poor souls, especially based on last week's episode, you're privy to how we start a show now.
Those are the sinking claps.
Yeah. To everyone else, I'm going to do a hard intro, so you're not going to hear this.
Why are you addressing them if they can't hear you?
I'm addressing the YouTube audience.
Are you?
No. Well, I was indirectly addressing the
Just
YouTube
said
audience.
to everyone else.
You're right. That's a logical fallacy.
It's not a fallacy. It's just,
Unnecessary.
yeah.
It's a logical fallacy that I thought I could address everyone else and then say that I'm going to cut this out because then I wouldn't be addressing everyone since
No, logical fallacy is more like me saying that since Rob has blonde hair and Rob's a host of Future Chat, then all hosts of Future Chat must have blonde hair. But that's not true.
Rob, I think you're talking more about a paradox.
Maybe.
Because you're addressing people.
Yeah.
If you address someone that's not going to hear it, are you addressing them at all?
That's deep.
It is deep.
This week on Philosophy Chat. Russell's
All right.
teapot. Is it really that small?
We're back with another episode of Future Chat that got off to a very weird start, but I think that might just be our cold open now. We have been talking leading up to the recording of this episode about the conservative leadership race that concluded last night. And Nick, I guess you had a few things you wanted to say about it, and then we can discuss briefly.
Like we were actually talking about it, though. It's not that I had anything to say particularly.
Okay, well, I have a few things that I'm interested to like muse on, but it's mostly just me being uninformed.
Well, Nick made a comment last night on Twitter about voting systems, something about preferential voting.
Yeah,
I
they had.
did.
And just for our listeners, a leadership convention does not happen every day. Like this is the first leadership convention that the Conservative Party of Canada has had since its inception.
Since the merger of the parties that made it.
Yeah, like that. It was a brand new party at the time, so 2004, 2005, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like an Apple.
So we're not
keynote.
counting. Are we not counting the progressive conservatives in this?
No, it's a different
this history.
party.
Oh, sorry, I guess. Okay, sorry. Continue.
But it's kind of like an Apple keynote speech, except instead of consumer tech, it's important.
To the people involved in it.
Yeah.
Like
counter zing.
all Canadians. I don't know when the last time an Apple speech led to a change in taxation structure, but hey, I could be wrong. Or maybe it just hasn't
actually
happened
did
yet.
come up. Honestly, in one of the keynotes, they started talking about tax because Apple famously keeps a lot of their income abroad in foreign currencies and doesn't repatriate their money. So it does come up, but you're right. It's a lot less important to most people.
Yeah.
Counter zing.
The zing's just flying here this morning on Philosophy Chat. But so their voting system was a ranked ballot, which that is ironic because they're convinced that that's not appropriate to introduce to all Canadians, but they think it's fine for their own leadership conventions.
Right. And the Liberals felt the same way. They also used ranked ballot.
No.
Sorry, not for leadership. They used it for the most recent, at least the most recent round. not necessarily for leadership. I'm not actually sure, but when they were picking at least our local MP and the other MPs that were picked in the last by-election, they used ranked ballots to pick those MPs.
Oh, yeah, that's a different thing. That's not like a leadership convention. That's just like the local thing. But
well, for the federal MP, but
this is actually, as far as I know, this is actually a pretty big departure from the standard voting structure for a delegated convention.
Yeah.
Or this wasn't a delegated convention. Anyway.
They did use an indirect voting system, though, I noticed. They didn't count votes. They counted points that were allotted based on the number of votes.
Did they?
Yeah.
Because
I don't know how those things map up, but they allotted a certain number of points for a certain number of votes in whatever areas of the country. But it wasn't directly counting votes.
Weighting, kind of?
I don't know how it works. I didn't look too far into it, but I did hear that they weren't using votes. They were using points.
Are you sure?
You win points based on the number of votes, but why would you do that if they're not weighted some way?
Did you?
I guarantee you.
I could be wrong, but I'm wondering if you heard them talking about percentage points and thought they were talking about points.
No, they actually. I'll find a link. But continue.
Okay. No, normally they have a round of voting, and then they drop off the person in last place, and then they have another round of voting, and then they drop off the last person, and the last person will give a speech and say, like, usually they'll just say, oh, I free my delegates and they can do whatever. Or they'll say, listen, I really believe in so-and-so. If you're my delegates, I recommend you vote for so-and-so. And then a lot of people will.
Right.
But, and so that makes for a pretty long voting day.
Yeah, 13 rounds.
Well, it depends on the number of candidates.
In this one, there were 13 rounds.
Yeah, in this one, there were 13 rounds.
Mm-hmm.
But it makes for some long days and some surprising results. Like, I'm trying to remember which convention it was and how exactly it went, but I'm thinking of the first leadership convention that Michael Ignatieff was in. Okay. And I'm pretty sure the last round came down to like Bob Ray and Stéphane Dion somehow. And because Stéphane Dion got someone, I want to say Wolf was his name. Anyway, Wolf asked all his delegates to support Stéphane because he believed in his green shift idea. And then just suddenly, what was supposed to be a race between Bob Ray and Michael Ignatieff came out with Stéphane Dion.
Right.
But this one, like, everyone's votes were in from the very start.
Yes.
And so the time between votes being held was very, very small.
Mm-hmm.
If any of you watched it.
Did you?
I don't think you watched it.
Like the time in between votes, like this time in between the announcement of who won subsequent rounds. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Like because they counted all the votes, but people didn't have multiple rounds because it was ranked.
Well,
they just dropped off.
Like they treated it as rounds.
They did treat it as rounds. Like I assume more for spectacle than anything else. Because
absolutely, yeah. Like because otherwise it's just like, hey guys, this is your leader.
Yeah. Did you watch when Hello Internet did their flag referendum thing?
Mm-hmm.
Did you watch that video of them counting the actual ballots?
No.
Okay. They had a podcast episode that was just something like 2 hours of them running through the ranked ballots.
I listened to it.
Okay, you listened. I listened, and then when they started referencing the video stream, and I was just sitting there, I was like, I should just turn on the video version of this. But it was very interesting seeing them go through the rounds and seeing how things changed. But in their case, they used ranked balloting, but it wasn't necessary because the plurality also got the majority in the end. But in this case, the Maxime Bernier won the first 12 rounds, but then ended up coming in second because he only got 49% of the actual overall ranked vote, which I found very interesting.
And so, like, this was actually my story for this week, but I found out, or I read up on the company that actually did the voting system.
Okay.
Goes by the name of Dominion Voting Systems, and they've actually, like, they worked on the last Liberal leadership convention, which selected Justin Trudeau as the leader.
Okay.
And they just worked on the Conservative leadership convention, which selected Andrew Scheer.
Right.
And like their systems actually sound really cool, like really robust. So they've obviously just done a ranked balloting system for this. They have an ad on their site for the availability of ranked balloting systems for Ontario in 2018. Because as you can imagine from the Hello Internet stream, that can get pretty tedious.
Yes.
Like rather than just counting all the votes, they had, like, how long did it take them?
It was like at least 2 hours, if not more. And that was just several thousand. I don't think they had to mail in postcards with their votes.
Yeah. And that's like a couple thousand, like there were 114,000 votes in the Conservative leadership convention.
Right.
But like these systems, even if you're doing a balloted system, like I think it said it counts in the range of 130 ballots per minute. With like,
which is only 2
accuracy
per second.
That's still pretty good.
It's very much faster than a person counting, but it's not computer fast, which I don't know if that makes me kind of disappointed that it's so slow, or if it makes me feel good that they're actually taking enough time to dedicate to making sure they do it right.
I've been a part of a hand count before, and that's just a first past the post hand count.
Yeah.
That's tedious.
I can imagine.
Like
so with the states' balloting system, with like the punch vote ballots with the chads and hanging chads, that's not like new concept, right? Like automated counting.
No.
If you want to enlighten us, I don't actually know how the state's voting system works.
When you say the state's voting system, are you referring to the actual system of how they vote, or the political system of how votes are counted?
Like the machinery that does the voting and then the counting.
Okay.
Or maybe they're actually hand counted. Like I
think they're hand counted. That would be my assumption.
Counted. The punching that's done by a machine.
Yeah.
Because that was the whole debacle, was that the machines weren't punching the things out completely. Like, and a couple stations I think had like thousands of votes that weren't valid because they weren't, the little Chad has to be completely punched out for the vote to count.
Yeah. The hanging Chad was the big
Chad, right?
meme of the year 2000.
So just so I'm clear, that's like you have a hole punch and the hole that's punched out doesn't completely detach. That's what we're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay. Until today, I had no idea what a hanging Chad was.
Yeah, that's what that was. And it was just, as far as I know, other states might have used it, but the main problem was that so many voting stations in Florida specifically used it. And that was the very contested state that ended up going to the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Yeah. And honestly, having been part of that hand count, like the fate of democracy rests on someone who had like an hour or two training session, and they take basically anyone.
Right.
So like the rules are very strict and very clear in Canada anyway as to what counts as a vote. It's like to the point where I think at the time anyway, like if it breached the border of the circle by too much, like it was considered not counted. I might be misremembering, but like very strict. And we had one person in the training course who said, well, can you count that? And they're like, well, no. because it's like one of those quizzes where you put it up in front of the entire class and it's like, which one of these are valid? And they're like, well, I'd count that one. It's like, well, I mean, she's like, yeah, like it's clear what they meant to do. It's like, well, that is your right to call under the Elections Act.
The thing, Nick, did you when you were doing this count? From what I've heard, it's very stressful even for the people doing the counting, because you, like, people from representatives of each party that's represented are allowed to have people at the station not counting, but they're allowed to oversee the process. So I'd imagine you have people just like watching you like hawks, trying to make sure that everything's being counted properly. Is that the case?
Well, I mean, we had a New Democrat scrutineer there, but in terms of the problems that were caused for me that day, the scrutineer was the least of my problems.
Okay.
Like, I think in our actual box, we had, like, I think we had 1 or 2 spoiled ballots, and they were very obviously spoiled.
Right.
But, like, I mean, it was me, the other guy for the polling station, the person who was overseeing the entire site, and the scrutineer. I think we were the ones at the table, and like everyone else, because we were the last ones to be free to do the counting, and we had a lot to count, yada yada yada.
Right.
But it wasn't a big deal. Like, the person I was with had done it many times before, so he actually did a really good job, because he like separated into piles all the votes so that recounting was faster and easier.
Right.
Because you have to double check sometimes.
Good.
But like when we had to make like 1 or 2 judgment calls, and like they put it down for like all the people with the power to make the call, and we all just looked at it and said, yeah, no, that you can't do that, and just got pitched.
So did you vote on which ballot was valid?
No.
And then they used a ranked ballot for that vote.
Had we,
and then had to
it would have
decide
been
if those
unanimous
votes are
on the
valid.
first round, so it would have been a first round exit.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm very curious. I'm going to be doing some research into this Andrew Scheer character, because I've been reading, like, I'm trying to read. I can never tell anymore if the Globe and Mail story or the National Post story that I read is going to be good. So I don't want to trust just like people on Twitter saying this guy has got some very backwards ideas about certain things, versus looking at someone trying to actually be objective and get information. And so I'm holding out too much judgment, but I'm kind of open to hearing, because I keep thinking, ever since the last 2 years or so, when we've been hearing like the UK, all like very extreme right-wing politicians, and then the US obviously, and then France with Marine Le Pen, I just want like reasonable conservatism, because I feel like I could actually get on board with some policies that a reasonable conservative would put forth, but they just seem to keep taking the most extreme policies possible, and I can't be on board with it.
I mean, how much did you follow the race?
I only followed it from the headlines that entered my bubble, which was like Kevin O'Leary is a tool, and Kelly Leach was
I think we
racist.
have a title.
Yeah. Like I kept getting, it was Kelly Leach, right? That's her name?
Yeah.
I kept seeing ads for her on the internet everywhere.
Really?
And yeah.
I wonder what filters you're triggering.
I know. It was very odd, but I kept hearing about her
Rob
values.
is blonde-haired, blue-eyed, white.
born here, but moved to Alberta and grew up in Alberta.
Did you guys see, I don't know if I retweeted it or not, but I didn't realize this was a thing that in Twitter, I think both on the app and on desktop, you can look up.
Oh, yeah, I did see that.
Advertisers you, like the different labels that are applied to you based on either your tweets or your browsing history or whatever. and see what companies have targeted you. So presumably they're targeting you based on these labels that have been assigned to your profile. But it's crazy seeing you through the eyes of like a marketing department. It's crazy. Like I have so many weird things attached to me. And so it'd be interesting for you. We'll put in the show notes if I can find it.
I'll find the link because it's if you go into twitter.com/settings/your_Twitter_data, I'll post a link so you don't have to type that all in, but you can go to the very bottom of it. It'll show you interests from Twitter. Interests matched to you based on your profile and activity. Then you have interest from partners, which is partners building audiences around shopping decisions, lifestyle, and other online and offline behaviors. And then tailored audiences, which I think, Mike, was the thing you posted.
I think so, probably,
I'm part of 9,321 audiences from 2,500 advertisers, which is just like, that's too much data. But there are links to, you can actually request the list of advertisers that they have for you, which I mean, is in terms of transparency, that's pretty cool of them too.
I actually did that, and I got the email the other day. And it was just pages upon pages of Twitter handles.
In terms of an East meets West corner, I was really excited because I thought Bernier was going to win, and he has a lot of like not hard but soft libertarian ideas, like shrinking government, which is often a conservative thing, but also like ending supply management and like he had, because libertarianism like has no social conservatism elements to it. It's just like, do whatever the hell you want. Are you not hurting other people? Good, carry on. And so like I was, and a lot of people were really excited to see like the tax and spend liberals versus the libertarian conservative versus whatever the hell the NDP have decided they're going to be by that point. Because it's honestly pretty up in the air at this point.
It really is.
Like that was going to be a battle of ideas that was like really like not typical of Canadian politics. And now we have like a version of Harper who smiles a lot and people don't hate yet. Or people aren't upset with yet.
Right. So yeah, we'll be keeping an eye on that politics situation, but
also if we could momentarily address the coverage, like
yeah, sure.
At the end they go, there's 5 minutes remaining, but someone had come over and whispered something to Scheer and Bernier, and all of a sudden Bernier he like smiled and then he's just like stone faced. And across the aisle from him, Scheer is sitting there like with his big grin on his face. He's like, did you need that extra 5 minutes?
Yeah, really.
Really? Like, that's silly.
It's kind of unfortunate that we make people, like, these are human beings, we make them go through things like that on television. Like the NHL draft lottery used to be, I mean, when they first started, I guess that was when they also came out with the idea to televise it, and now it becomes a bigger and bigger show every year where they have like a special segment dedicated to it, and they fly in all the GMs or owners or whoever it is, have them sit in a room, and it's like, this is for a draft pick. Like, it's important, but it's not that important.
In fairness, like having them there is pretty, like, it leads to some good theater.
Well, that's what I mean. It's all theater. It's like these are people, and we're treating it like a spectacle.
But you can literally have trades go down on the floor. Right? Like, I'll trade up my draft pick, like, based on what happened. I mean, like, you're still having scouts and whatnot advising you, but I'm sure a lot of that kind of discussion takes place literally like from table to table.
Oh yeah, like, I mean, the year that they drafted Kadri, what's his guy? Elmer Fudd from the Ottawa Senators wandered over to Brian Burke, asked him if he wanted to trade, and like the audio came out later, but like Burke looks back at him, is it Kadri you want? Is it Kadri you're after? And he's like, yeah, it's we're gonna try and draft Kadri, and he's like, okay, well, we're taking him, so.
So I'm not referring to the NHL draft being televised, which I get. I'm referring to the draft lottery, where they
the draft lottery
decide who picks, who gets
Right.
the first 20 picks or whatever it is.
Yeah, no,
and
that's
decide the
unnecessary.
order.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that is much like the leadership convention, which, I mean, you could have just in about 10 minutes run it all through.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do
Maybe not
make
10, but yeah,
a couple hours.
120 votes per minute. Yeah.
Even then,
it
like,
could all be over in a couple of hours, but not have to kind of go through the rounds of voting like that.
I'm wondering how it actually works, because if the machine was capable of just recording everything all at once, like if it had that much memory, which you'd hope
I would hope it does. Yeah.
Yeah, it'd just be like, because they only allowed 10 options for the conservative leadership. So all you actually need to do is record an array that's 150,000 long and 10 elements wide.
Yeah.
So
very doable.
Do we know, based on the ranked ballot system, if that voting style came into play, or was there an outright majority with the number one preference?
No, it's the ranked ballot is the reason we have the result that we do.
Okay.
Then sorry, you were briefly gone while we were discussing it, but Maxime Bernier had the majority of, or the plurality of votes, not the majority, not 50%, 51%.
He had the plurality for 11 or 12 straight rounds, and then lost on the 13th round.
Oh, crazy.
Yeah.
But like in the 12th round that left the last three candidates standing, the third place guy that got eliminated had a 20% vote share, which is substantial for that round.
Yeah. So he was the guy that won was nobody's top choice. I mean, very few people's top choice, but was the consensus of a
in the
majority.
aggregate.
About 28% of people's top choice.
Yeah. Yeah. But nowhere near like he was not going to win until the very end, when everyone else kind of said, we're just not supporting this other guy, which is the point of ranked balloting. Like that's actually kind of the desired outcome of choosing a system like that.
So, okay. So again, maybe you guys already talked about this on the last episode or the one before that of Hello Internet. They talked about France's voting system, I think it was.
Yeah.
And how in that one, they do a runoff vote, but everyone re-votes.
Yes.
Like you don't vote for your preferences right off the bat, and to keep those is people get a chance to re-vote.
Yep.
Like in the next couple of weeks or whatever, right? So there's almost a second campaign round.
Yeah.
Is this similar? People re-vote, or do people rank and then it gets counted until you have a winner?
In this case, that's not the case. Like they just had one vote and that was it. Like one ranked ballot. Although, like I was telling Rob, in normal conventions, what they have is, or delegated conventions, maybe. Long and short, you'll have a round of voting. The last place person is eliminated, and then they'll get up and like give a speech and say, I either release my voters to do what they want, or in some rarer cases, they'll say, listen, I strongly believe in so-and-so, and I want you to support them. And then, I mean, they can still vote however they want, but in delegated conventions, I think they're more likely to go, all right, I came with you and I'll do what you think.
Right.
But that's how we ended up getting Stéphane Dion as liberal leader for a few years, because he just kind of came out of nowhere and someone sent their delegates to support him, and then, well, the rest is history.
So we've spent a lot of time on East meets West Corner, which I love, by the way.
Dominion Voting Systems Corner?
Sure.
Dominion Voting Systems for all your leadership convention needs.
Not yet a sponsor.
Dominion voting systems for all your ranked balloting needs.
I'm glad you did the second reading. I'm going to keep both in, but I like it.
Still not yet a sponsor.
I need to talk to you guys about Microsoft OneNote because we don't have enough in this world of people completely reevaluating their life choices and reforming opinions of things. And I did that this week.
Rob, is this a killer app?
Killer, I don't know if it's a killer app, but it's certainly an app I'm going to be using much more in the future.
Like the old definition of killer app was like that program is the reason why you buy the machine that you're getting. You want a machine that can run this app.
No, it's actually kind of the opposite of that.
Okay, because like the first spreadsheets were like that. Like the first spreadsheet programs, where instead of actually having a large sheet of paper that you wrote things down on and like erased when you needed to change a number, all of a sudden accountants were like, and that was the killer app. Wow, that was quite the sound signal. Enjoy
it really
that,
was. So we talked, I forget if we have, I'm sure we've talked about this in the past, but Mike and I definitely talked about it on desktop a couple of episodes ago. And
a member of Unwind Media.
Yeah. I love this. The most important thing to me is that an application is cross-platform. And so because I use a Windows desktop, a Mac laptop, I have an Android phone, I have an iPhone, I have an iPad, I have all these things. I have been using apps. I've been trending towards things I can do that go across all of those computers. But the one computer that tended to be left out, other than Google Chrome, was my work computer. And so there was a lot of things that I wanted to do, but I couldn't do it because I didn't have admin privileges on my work computer. And there's no way the IT group at my work would install just any old application I wanted on my work computer. And because we use Office, OneNote is on our workstations already. Like when you get there, OneNote's already installed. And because you can log into OneNote with your Microsoft account, this becomes the network that I'm on at work becomes a separate platform in this way. And so OneNote has now become the ultimate cross-platform thing for me. And when OneNote first debuted, it was a thing that like for me, looking at it, it was a thing that you could write text into and like separate it into groups, and it seemed interesting, but not all that powerful, not all that useful. And because there was only really, at the time when it first came out, there was only really like Windows. I don't even think iOS was a thing yet. Like you can get OneNote for Windows and OneNote for Mac, and maybe not even Mac at the very beginning. So it didn't have any much of that appeal to me. But now you can, it's like Netflix. You can get it on any platform. OneNote has apps for everything, and you can add text. You can literally add any piece of content or media or anything to a OneNote
folder.
And there's nothing in OneNote that's actually called folders. There are workbooks, and then workbooks, sections, pages, notebooks, sections, pages, and then like content areas. There are all these things. So I can add a table, I can add a file attachment, I can add a spreadsheet, I can add a screen grab, I can add a picture, I can add a video, I can add recorded audio, I can insert equations, I can draw with my finger or with an Apple Pencil. In my particular case, you can add URLs from so you can add all kinds of content to these things, and you can organize things such that it's like flipping pages in a book, going between things, which is the whole, it's a corollary to having a notebook full of stuff, but digital. And my life using Google Drive and using documents for things, I've kind of had a document model for organizing myself, where it's kind of like you have a bunch of books on a shelf and you have to go and grab a book, and then you open it, and then you have like one page on this book, and then you put the book away, and then you grab another book and do something different. Whereas OneNote for me has been like flipping pages in one single book. And because of the nature of documents and the way I work with things, I really like the idea. So if I have a piece of content saved for future chat, say, and I want to send that information to, I don't know, be it another podcast, be it desktop, be it my own personal work, be it my work stuff. If I want to save a piece of content.
But we're your favorite podcast, right?
Sorry?
But we're your favorite podcast, right? Oh, thank God. Suck it, Ottawa.
You are. What I can do is I can have a personal OneNote thing where I kind of I just like push all my information into that. Like I offload my brain into that personal OneNote. And then I can literally just copy and paste individual pages to different sections. Like I can just throw it, because it's all treated the same. I can just drag and drop anything into any other platform in a way that you can't really do that well or that easily with any other platform that I've used. And so I've basically, so spoiler alert, I didn't tell you guys, but I made a future chat OneNote notebook. Ooh. And I've just been dumping all my knowledge into it about future chat. So like now I have a page, or I have a section called YouTube and a page called Start a New Episode. And I just put a bunch of links in there, all the things that I do to start to make a new episode happen. And so rather than having like a set of bookmarks that I open, remembering what folder I have to go to create a new audition document to start the episode, a link to the page on the website that lets me update the thing to a new number. All of this stuff is just now on one page. I can see it all at once, and I just have to open OneNote on any computer, any system I'm on. This also works on the web, by the way. I just have to go in and click these links, and like everything is all there in one spot. And so I'm doing this for work. Like I've used OneNote more in the last 24 hours than I had ever used it the rest of my life combined. And it has been amazing to not have to think, like even with something like Instapaper or Pocket for Mike, whatever read later service you use or whatever. Yeah. Even stuff like Evernote. It's not, even Evernote, like it's very siloed. You can't as effectively separate your life into different, like you can't take, at least as far as I know, maybe OneNote or maybe Evernote is a lot better than I have ever seen it be used for, but you couldn't say start a new Evernote book or like set of notes and then share it with a set of people, and then open a second set of notes and then share it with a different set of people. Like you can't, there's not really that kind of cross-person, cross-platform, cross-content kind of movability. But this program is so adaptable to anything you could ever want to do. And you can organize your information in any way, like any number of ways you want. I needed people to basically, in summary, give OneNote another chance, I would say, because the way that life has been going, we have all of these things that are just constantly hitting us. Basically, it's like, for me, it feels like they're all hitting me in the face, one after the other. Like a video pops up in my feed, all this, like a Facebook post comes up and I'm tagged in it, and all this stuff keeps coming in. And I'm able to just offload all of it into one place that I can just open anywhere from any computer. I can just go in, log in, and see everything. And I want to hear what you guys think, and we can talk a little more about it. But that's what I wanted to say.
So pretty excited about OneNote is what I'm gathering from this.
I am.
So it sounds good. It sounds even great based on how you're describing how you've been able to use it. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. That's just cool to be able to have all these different types of files all in one place and be able to be shareable and collaboration. But I thought, doesn't Google Drive already do that? And I'd like to hear your answer on that, because that's essentially what I'm hearing you say is the benefit of OneNote.
So, okay.
And I'm trying to figure out how that's different.
If you read a story on the internet that you really like, where do you put it in Google Drive?
Well, I don't, for one.
Well, that's one reason. Like, I can just put it in OneNote.
But you can set up a applet to send things from Pocket or your bookmarks saver of choice to a Drive spreadsheet.
Yep. So which spreadsheet?
Anyone. It doesn't matter which one.
No, but then you need, like, so for me, I have a Future Chat spreadsheet that I send links to for Future Chat, and I have that for all my shows. But and so that's great for preparing notes. Like, it's great for preparing show notes, for instance, for the show. But if there's a story or an article or something that I read, and I'm say I'm trying to gather my thoughts on politics, it's not as convenient for me to be like, okay, what's that spreadsheet that I saved that link to? Unless you build like 50 different spreadsheets to categorize things in your life. And I just...
Okay, so in your case, using OneNote, what would you do then?
I would send it to OneNote as a quick note. And so I have not only does OneNote exist on every platform, but they use the functionalities that those platforms present in the way that you'd expect them to. So you can save quick notes. Like, you can take a quick picture and send it to OneNote. You can save a quick note and send it to OneNote, and it'll populate one specific section of your kind of whatever workbook you want, but of one specific area in a workbook. And so you can have all these different types of, like, if I take a picture and it's important and I want to save it somewhere, I can send it to OneNote and it will show up in this area. But I can also take a quick note, like write down a PIN number or something. That's a terrible idea, but write down a PIN number and I just send it to that same OneNote. I can record an audio snippet and I can send it to OneNote. I can just take any piece of thing and I can send it, and it'll just keep it. And then I can organize it as I want, either after the fact or as I'm doing it.
So how's that different from just saying add to Google Drive? Like, that option exists.
How would you add a link to, like, simplest, like, I can go through this for each content type. Like, yes, I could make an audio recording in like voice notes on my phone and then upload it to Google Drive. I could do that.
Yeah, you just share it to Google Drive.
But where does it go in Google Drive?
Just your root folder.
Like, just in my main Drive folder?
Yeah.
So I'm intrigued by that thought for audio files specifically, but like the example of links, unless you're sending them all to individual spreadsheets, that, like, it presents the same problem. Like, when you open OneNote, you can go and see, like, you open a page and you just see everything you want. Like, you see everything you've saved to that area. Whereas on Google Drive, if I need to go and see, oh, hey, what are the last few links that I've saved in this category, which again is a separate applet in IFTTT that you have to make for each of these things. You have to go and open the document. Like, you have to go to open the specific spreadsheet you created to see the list of links. Whereas in OneNote, it's all just like, you go to the page on OneNote. So
the links are their own item.
Exactly.
Okay. I can see the benefits of it. Like, it sounds better in Drive for that application. Drive. But then I'm using Drive and OneNote. So, which to me isn't better.
For me, being able to, like, say I'm sitting at home and I have this thought, like, oh,
you're sitting at home and you have this thought, like, oh,
on Monday at work, I need to go and do this thing. And so you go and do let's say you do a quick web search, find a relevant piece of a thing you want to think about on Monday at work. You can save that to a OneNote note at home and then kind of forget about it, silo it away. And even though I can't access my work OneNotes outside of work because they're shared on our network, but they're not shared. Like you can't share them externally. You can specifically set access based on access to a specific network.
For each notebook or whatever.
For each notebook, exactly. But all I have to do is save it to my personal OneNote, and then I can open my work OneNote, like the OneNote program on my computer at work. I have access to both of those, the network shared one and the home shared one, and I just have to hit move page to my work notebook because they're all individual pieces of content. Whereas if I was trying to do something like that with Google Drive or any combination of other stuff, it means like emailing myself information.
Yeah.
And then
I was just going to say, I just email myself when I want to do that.
But if I get 100 emails a day at work, or even if I get 20 emails a day, like I constantly lose track of emails. Like I just forget about them.
Yeah.
Because there's constantly a new thing coming in. Whereas this, if it kind of separates it and it lets me keep the important stuff without having to focus on the stuff that isn't important in order to get through it. Like this is just stuff that I have kept in an area. There's nothing cluttering it up with anything anybody else has done. Anyways, I'm not trying to say this will change your life. And I'm not even trying to say this will change. Like I may get bored of this and like find it not useful in the end. But if you haven't looked at it in a while, I'm suggesting that you take a look. And I'm going to be sharing the Future Chat notebook with you guys so you can see what I mean and what I've been doing. Because I feel like this would actually, for me, be a way that I wouldn't have to, like I could offload my knowledge so that someone else, in theory, could post an episode of the podcast without needing to actually get instructions from me constantly, like having to ask, oh, like, what do you do in this case? I could just post either information, either text or links to things. The other interesting thing about being able to do this, and then that you would need either a bunch of kind of individual Word documents or some other kind of document thing in order to do, is that, so at work we have our network drive, which is like labeled S, it's the S drive. And we each have a personal drive where we can put personal work files that we're not necessarily wanting to keep shared, called the Y drive, like it's mapped to Y. And then we have our C drive. We have a secure thing that's run by a program called OpenText, where we can securely store documents at work on a server, and they have versioning control and all of this and permission control. It's really frustrating and annoying having to swap constantly between those systems when you're creating favorites or kind of putting shortcuts together and all that. But if you have a OneNote workbook, you can just paste, like platform agnostically, paste links to any of those file systems, separate file systems, and it will just automatically populate with, it'll automatically just take you to that area with whatever it is. And so in addition, you can also link, like everything in OneNote has a link associated with it. So you can link to a section, you can link to a workbook, you can link to a page, you can even link to a paragraph on a page. And so like I have in my Start a New Episode page for Future Chat, I have the link to YouTube where you can start a new event. I have the link to a Google Drive folder where I can create a new episode, new show notes for an episode. And then I have a link to a separate OneNote page that has the YouTube description pasted into it. So I can just go into that page, paste the YouTube description into YouTube now that I've created the new episode. Then I have a link to the Future Chat folder on my computer. And then I have a link to unwindmedia.com where I can edit the new, like the next post page so that like I can share it once it's ready. But this is all like those are just 5 entries in a document. Like those are just 5 things, but they're pointing to 5 separate types of content, 5 separate areas.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no easy way to do that quickly. Like if you did it in Google Drive, they'd have to be different documents. And you can link to a different Google Drive document, but then you're sitting there waiting constantly for things to be loading, or like there's just a lot more lag, whether it be mental lag or whether it be network lag or computer lag between kind of switching things, where this is one program that has everything. It's all, you can store all your knowledge on a topic in that. And I haven't found that in Drive.
So do you think that OneNote has the capacity to explode among consumers for this reason, or is it still just obscure enough that you don't think it'll happen?
I honestly don't know, because you hear about it every once in a while, but and I know that people use it because they wouldn't, like, this interface has added more and more stuff faster than any other platform has. Like faster than any other Microsoft invested platform. There's definitely more features than have changed in Windows. There's definitely more features than have changed in any other Office application. There's even more features that have changed than like Microsoft Edge, the new browser. Like it's so modern, and the syncing works really well, and everything, like like I said, it's cross-platform, but it's even cross. It works in home life. It works in like a school setting. It works in a work setting. Like it's completely life situation agnostic. Everyone has bits of information that they want to save, and this can handle literally anything you can throw at it. I can't think of a piece of computer content that it couldn't store for you.
So the key differentiator I'm hearing between this and Drive is the user experience when you're trying to use the stuff you've put in it.
Mm-hmm.
And
like,
just being able,
yeah,
it's kind of like in this, it's, I don't know how to describe, like you're able to like silo it better almost within your own kind of like notebook.
There are silos, but they're right next to each other, and there are all kinds of very, very distinct but interoperable gaps. So the silos are all like, they're basically different silos, but they're in the same, like they're quantum superposed on each other.
It's like a silo farm.
Exactly, kind of. But all the silos are in the same place. Like even physically, they're all in the same place. So you're basically swapping back and forth between kind of spatial dimensions in order, like quantum dimensions, in order to differentiate them, because they're all in the same place.
Right.
You have all these different contexts. Like I'm going to even just, we've talked about Slack before and how people don't use it and how that's a problem. But I've always found that like if neither of you use Slack at all and we had conversations separate on Messenger or Hangouts or whatever, I would still find Slack useful because of all the things that interoperate with it. Like I send all kinds of things to Slack just because I want to be notified. OneNote doesn't necessarily notify me when I change things. Like you can't necessarily set reminders. It's not a be all and end all app for everything. But working with Drive and working with Slack and working with all these other things, like it's not a Drive replacement because I link to Google Drive all the time in it, but it is the kind of all-encompassing thing that makes anything else you use more useful.
I feel like Keep has a potential to be similar.
It has the potential, absolutely, but it does not reach that potential.
No.
That's what I've been using is Keep.
Yeah. Like between, from a throw stuff into something standpoint, it's either Drive or Keep. Like Keep will just, take down notes. Like I have a note for like things I want to buy, just like, or need to buy or whatever, like, and just have that as just like a standing kind of thing. So that'd be like my note for just
Yeah.
whenever I want to add stuff to it. And I'll throw links in there, like a grocery list is in there, like all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But maybe I just haven't found a need to throw just like files and audio and video and pictures and that kind of thing into something.
Mm.
So maybe that's why I don't necessarily appreciate the benefits that OneNote does offer, but I can tell that for what you're looking to do.
Right.
This does sound like it does something that Drive can't do.
Yeah.
Or
Like
not, or can't do as
what I'm
well.
going to do is if I go into a meeting now at work, I'm going to bring my iPad. I will be able to take a page where I can paste, like in my work OneNote, I can paste the agenda for the meeting into OneNote, and then I can copy that page or move it or whatever I want to do into my personal one so that I can take it off the network. I can go into the meeting. I can take
Which I'm
notes
surprised is
over-
allowed. If your network is so locked down that you're not allowed to access it outside of work, that they'd allow people to move stuff out of.
You can move pages between notebooks. So I would just move the page into it. Like I would copy the page into a different notebook. It would be like copying. It would be like saying, "Oh, I don't think you should be able to move a spreadsheet to like a work spreadsheet into a new spreadsheet and then email that spreadsheet out of the network." Like that's a ridiculous thing to be able to try to limit. Like
Maybe
I could physically print out a copy of a page and I could leave the building. Like
well, you could carry a computer out of the building. Like I know the physical vulnerabilities, but I guess I know what you're saying. But just within OneNote, if a notebook is set to have certain security settings,
it's not set. The notebook itself is set to have certain security settings, but the content inside the notebook isn't.
Okay.
And so what I would do is I would copy the page to my own personal note, grab my iPad in the meeting, have the agenda open in OneNote. I can take notes over top of everything in the note. Once the meeting ends, move it. I can just copy it back into my work OneNote, and then it's saved. The text underneath, my annotations over top. I can make any more changes that I need to make, like finalize things. It's going to literally revolutionize the way I work, because what I have to do now, if I want to have the agenda for a meeting, because like our file system is all siloed, I would have to download a copy of the Word document that's the agenda to my iPad, and then open it in Word or open it in some PDF annotating document, or open it in some kind of thing that lets me annotate documents, and then save a copy of it, email it back to myself, or send it back to myself. Like there's no way for me to easily get quote unquote files from my iPad to my work computer. But with OneNote, it considers everything equally, and you can just move things back and forth between. And it's automatically, the automatic syncing is the important point there. Like, yes, it's basically the same if I just email it to myself, but then I'm having to do that as opposed to just saving it and having it sync across.
Right.
But yeah, it's going to totally change everything about everything for me. I assume. It seems like, based on the start, based on the first day and a half. So yeah, and it's also very easy to share things. So like I'll share this notebook with you guys, and you can see all the things that I've done to start. And so I would highly suggest looking into this on your own, especially if you feel overwhelmed like I do with all of the content that's constantly flying across your mind.
Right.
Well, I mean, my approach to that has been to cut down on the content that flows across my mind.
Same here, but in some cases you just can't.
I disagree.
In some cases I can't.
So I actually tried using OneNote, like on my computer, like my laptop. I'll sometimes bring it into meetings and take notes on it because it has the pen. And then I was like, well, how do I, and it's their work stuff usually, right? So it's like, okay, well, how do I easily integrate this into my work file system? And like you, we have OneNote on our computers. And so I just this is one of the few cases where I just used my regular Microsoft account. Like I didn't set up a separate work one. but yeah, I was able to set up a notebook for work stuff and then put my handwritten notes in that notebook and log in at work on OneNote using under my same account, and that notebook pops up there.
Right.
So yeah, it's nice to see. Yeah, like you said, it's accessible on the web as well, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
So
it's not only is it accessible on the web, which I like, but if you have OneNote installed on the computer and you go and log in on the web, you can hit open in OneNote, like open in desktop, and it'll pop the desktop application open and open that wherever you are in that note, wherever you are in that workbook or notebook or whatever it is, it'll open that spot in the program, and you can directly have native app access instead of having to like go back and context switch, like open OneNote from the start and then go navigate back to where you were, which is like, again, one of the problems with Drive is that unless you have a link down to a specific folder or file, you really have to open Drive and then navigate back to the folder where you were.
Yeah. Well, there's no
different computer
desktop application for Drive either.
Right. Well, there is, but it's just the native file system, which is as good or as bad as it is for you.
When those are just like, even those are hyperlinks, like they're hyperlinks to Chrome, and then it opens in Chrome or whatever browser you're using. I can't remember if we talked about it last week about Microsoft's focus on cross-platform markets.
Maybe. Yeah, we talked about it in the context of build.
Yeah, because that was the Microsoft Graph thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think this is a good example of why that is something they should be focusing on, because that's what people look for. Like, people have PCs at work generally. And people want to be able to access that same stuff at home and on their personal device, which is often either Mac, iOS, or Android. Sometimes PC as well, if there's a laptop or a desktop kicking around the house. But with people using tablets and phones for the most part, then being able to interact with your Windows environment or Windows files outside of your PC is something that a lot of people, I think, want. And if Microsoft can, sell a $10 per month subscription to whatever it is that allows them to do that, then I think that's probably their best business model than trying to sell a Windows phone that integrates, or Windows tablets or whatever it is, right? So, like, I think I see the benefit of things like Office 365 and OneDrive. Like, for me, that those aren't solutions that I need right now, but I can definitely see the value of it if if a whole enterprise type system jumps on board with that. And Rob, you're mentioning that you're trying to encourage either silently or maybe a bit more audibly for your work to get onto 365.
Yeah. We won't talk about it this week because there's not enough time, but I'm going to bring this up in a future episode. My attempts since this ransomware that we've talked about the last couple of weeks, the WannaCry, the risks of having unpatched or unpatchable software because it's out of software range. And I did some research before this episode. Again, I'm not going to get into it now, but I just want to mention, I did some research on Windows 7, which is what we currently use at work, and Microsoft Office 2010 is what we use at work. Yeah. The extended support for Windows 7 ends in 2020. And if you've ever worked in government, you know that if someone starts something now, especially a big thing like upgrading operating systems, it might not get done by January 14th, 2020. But mainstream support, which is kind of the consumer level support, ended for Windows 7 as of January 13th, 2015. So we are well outside. We're over 2 years outside the range of mainstream support for Windows 7 already. And obviously it's different because they're using Windows 7 Enterprise, but there's a lot of things that go along with that where I feel like I need to be strongly pushing that we need to, if they're not already thinking about it, they need to be thinking quickly about upgrading their systems.
Right.
Because it's an enterprise license, you're already paying for an enterprise license. Why not just pay for an updated enterprise license? But anyways, that's something that I'm working on now, and I'll bring up later. Talk about in more detail. By the way, I made some notes in my personal notebook about it's literally a note called updating NSERC systems. And I've got sections. So I'm fleshing it out in OneNote because it is taking over my life.
And then you can put the PowerPoint presentation you're preparing into that same folder.
Exactly. And I will.
Just imagine.
Okay, Mike, out of your stories, what do you want to close out the show with?
I think talking about the IFTTT is probably appropriate.
Oh, good.
It keeps with the theme of the show.
Yeah,
so far
I've been keeping quiet out of, I guess, probably non-binding NDA agreement. But what did IFTTT finally announce?
They're opening up their new system. I don't know if it's a new system because the idea of applets has been around for a couple months, if not a year at this point already, right? When
they changed the branding to call them applets, instead
so they
of recipes.
They went from recipes to applets, which I guess is more like Cody type feel. So I guess they started this program of allowing users to be more involved in, I don't know if it's like coming up with triggers and actions. Like I literally got accepted to the program when they opened it up to the public.
Yeah.
So I after reading that it's now a public, I'm like, that's not as special now. Because I got the email saying you've been accepted to the program. I'm like, yeah. It's like, wait, I didn't get accepted. It's just open now.
Yeah.
So Rob, you could probably talk a bit more on what was involved on the beta maker side. But the gist of it is that it's now a way more flexible, and it's basically allowing us as IFTTT users to generate workflows that we've been wanting for the past couple of years since we started using it, basically. So presumably they had been working on this since we wanted them because they identified it as something that people want. We obviously weren't the only people wanting it. So now anyone who was in our position from a couple of years ago was able to do what we wanted in one form or another. And Rob, why don't you kind of give us a bit of insight on that?
Well, so this update now being public gives a bunch of features that I had talked about in previous episodes about really wanting out of IFTTT, or at least some automation thing. And I think there's another competing programming applet recipe type thing called Zapier that does some of these things slightly differently or in different ways that have recently been updated. So one of the things they have, I believe they have cascading applets, I guess you'd call them, that kind of can run the gamut through a number of services and like take a piece of information, run it through a service, and then send that output of that to another service. Whereas what IFTTT introduced is just kind of batching of like having one trigger set off multiple different actions. And so that's been really powerful for me because it means that I can turn my 4 different IFTTT recipes for a show like Future Chat, where if I want to save a link, I can have it do a bunch of different things. Instead of writing 4 recipes, I can write one that I can then change. If I'm changing anything of the recipe, I don't have to go and change it in 4 places. I can just go open the recipe or the applet and then make the change and then save it, and I'm done. So I like that aspect, but the more powerful aspect that I haven't even really started looking into is that you can use JavaScript as just the programming language they chose, but you can write some programming that when a trigger runs, it will read that JavaScript at any condition set in it and only run conditionally based on that script. So in theory, you could say, anytime someone in a tweet mentions this hashtag, notify me via text message. And that would get super annoying if someone at 3 a.m. texted you. So what you could do is have it say, if it goes to, if I get this tweet mentioning this, tweet me unless it's between the hours of 10 p.m. and 8 a.m., in which case send it to this other service and do this with it, whatever. And so it enables that functionality itself, just enabling that coding lets you be a lot more nuanced in how you set up actions. And the way that they've implemented it is actually really neat because once a service registers with IFTTT, they set up a bunch of different triggers and they set up a bunch of different possible actions. But in so doing, it lets IFTTT set up an API to use any of the bits of information that the service sets up. So like if for Twitter's service, for instance, one of the things they set up is the time of the tweet. So you actually have that time of tweet as a trigger that you use to, as in JavaScript conditionals. You have the content of the tweet, you have the Twitter user, you can. So one of the things that I had talked about wanting was being able to trigger something based on time of day. And that still isn't a thing, but because I can use JavaScript, I could just set up, I could theoretically use any trigger that's going to trigger all the time. Like there's constantly going to be something new happening with that trigger, and conditionally set it to if it's 8 a.m. or between 8 a.m. and 8:15, do this. And then it will go and run, and I can set whatever I want as the output. So I don't really need to have like if it's 8 o'clock trigger, because I can kind of work around it. So it's not ideal for every situation, but it enables a lot more, because basically now anything you can program with JavaScript, you can put into output, because you could take the trigger text, like say you have, again, I'll use Twitter as an example. You could say, take the text of a tweet. You could run that tweet text through some kind of programming, whether it be like deleting words, whether it be like adding asterisks around a word, and then take that new text that you've morphed through JavaScript, that you've changed in some way, and then run that through the action. So you can take input from a service, run it through basically just programming, because if JavaScript isn't Turing complete, it's darn near close. So you can basically do anything you want within JavaScript. You could even probably link to external JavaScript if you wanted. Like there's all these kinds of things that this enables that makes IFTTT such a more open thing. Where Mike and I were always complaining that IFTTT was very, very, very narrow. Now it's incredibly broad, and you can do all kinds of things conditionally and all of that. It's awesome.
This is basically what workflow allowed people to do, right?
Kind of. Yeah. So workflow is even better in that it lets you set, I mean, I guess you could do it with JavaScript.
That's kind of what I was thinking.
Workflow
it's a system level thing, right?
It's not necessarily a system level, but it's a programming level. So if you know,
like what I mean is you can tap into, like being it Mac only, I'll use that as the example, but you can tap into your system's, I don't know, calendar, for example, or your system's clock, and say at this time do this. I'm assuming that's kind of how it works, and that might not be a perfect example, but that's the idea.
That's fine.
And you can plug into APIs as well directly, and run code on it and that kind of stuff. So it's but I think it does a lot more. Like you don't have to know programming, like it does the ad lib type thing, right? Or combining different parts into a single thing, and it runs it in the background, whatever.
It's visual programming, yeah.
Yeah. So this is similar in that sense, where you can stick with a visual part where you're using the triggers and actions, or you can just go straight to the JavaScript, which is essentially what it's doing in the background anyway.
Yeah, it is. But in very, very limited, very structured ways. Whereas this, you can basically, like I said, because it's programming, you can basically do anything you want. You can set variables within the JavaScript code to totally overtake. Like all the trigger does is set. So for
when to run it.
Yeah, for IFTTT, it's like run on a trigger. So the trigger still has to be one of the things that they have. But for workflow, the trigger has to either be like, you can do a share extension, you can do an action, so like when I hit this button, do the thing. Or there's one other thing, but there are still triggers, but they're within the operating system. And
so can you use the same stuff with like the do button?
Yes. Yeah, the do button can trigger things.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Because then you could you could literally do anything.
Yeah. So when I say you can do, if you can program it, like if it's possible to program a computer to do a thing, you can now do it with IFTTT and a button because they have the do button.
Nice.
Yeah. I'm very excited for IFTTT. I haven't looked too far into it. All I've really done is set up a few kind of recipes that trigger a bunch of things. But yeah, there's a whole lot of stuff going on.
Yeah.
Can you combine this with OnePlus somehow?
OneNote?
Yep.
You could. I believe so. I haven't actually even looked. I've meant to look pretty much the entire weekend. I'll just go check right now if OneNote is one of the either triggers or actions. I don't see how it couldn't be, but honestly, just because of the way the internet works, yeah, there is. OneNote
because it
is one of
sounds
the
like you could
services.
just revolutionize your whole life right here.
Yeah. You can send your Pocket favorites to OneNote. You can send your iPhone screenshots to OneNote. You can do pretty much anything to OneNote.
One of the cool things that I liked, and I don't know if it's related to this release of the beta now being public, is the integration with Assistant. Yeah, that's probably a separate thing, but I really liked that possibility of being able to essentially fully automate your house or your life essentially with being able to tap into Assistant.
Yeah. Well, to be honest, because Mike, you and I talked about it, I feel like it was in an area where Nick could see it, but Nick probably didn't because we flood Slack with things. But with the Google Assistant integration now, you can program the Google Assistant, the voice assistant, to react to any, like you set a phrase, a trigger phrase that you say when you say that phrase. And you can also, when you're setting up the trigger, you can not only say, when it says this phrase, do this thing, but you can set up alternate phrases, like alternate phrasings of the thing that will also trigger the same action. So you could phrase it in different ways if you want. I haven't done that, but it seems interesting. At least they're optional, separate triggers. But then you not only set what you want it to respond to when you say a certain thing, but you can set the assistant's response so it can respond with whatever text you want, including the variable. So if I say, like, if I'm trying to automate my Nest thermostat with Google Assistant and IFTTT, I could set up, okay, Google, change my thermostat to 72. And so I would program in the number 72 into IFTTT so that when I say, okay, Google, change my Nest thermostat to blank, it will grab that number out, whatever number I spoke, and then I can set the Google Assistant to respond, okay, Rob, the temperature of your thing is now blank, whatever, 72. And then it will trigger the action that then turns the Nest thermostat to 72. And
do you have a Nest thermostat?
I don't have a Nest thermostat, but that's an example. I don't have any Internet of Things. But
internet connected things.
I don't have any Internet of Stuff.
And
stuff of internet.
Are you just casually using Fahrenheit now, Rob?
I was gonna say, I was like, what craziness is
the only
this?
time my thermostat is in Fahrenheit, but that was not my choice. I don't really use it.
What
that was the default.
What year is it over in Vanier there?
I don't know.
Early 70s, maybe?
I don't know. What is it in metric?
21?
No, I mean, what year is it in metric? Anyways, that's a bad example. That's a very controversial example. I changed my default weather system in Google Assistant to Celsius. So it's a bad example in my personal case, but I've never set it. I just know my thermostat works in Fahrenheit.
That's sad.
Yeah, it actually is kind of sad. I would change it, but then it would mean learning my thermostat, and it's just not worth it.
Rob likes freedom units.
So I'm very excited. I set up a test thing. Like my Google Assistant, the most complicated thing it'll do is respond to, if I say, this is a test, it will respond like, you're darn right it is, or something. And then it'll send a message to Slackbot saying, like, this was a successful test. Like I just tested it, but it does work. And not only, like I mentioned, you can tell it to pull out a number. So if I say set my thermostat to 21, it will pull out the number 21 and throw it into the action. But you can also set up a trigger phrase. So if I say, okay, Google, text Julia, I'll be home in 10 minutes. And I set up the trigger, okay, Google, text Julia blank. And I put in I think it's just like is it a dash or something? It's some character that is the variable placeholder. It will pull that text out and it will send that text to the action. So it would send a text message saying whatever, I'll be late, whatever the message is.
Or you could say, okay, Google, I'm on my way. And then it will do whatever based on that trigger.
Exactly. So it's very very, very powerful. And with the JavaScript conditional thing or programming you could do, there's basically limitless what you could do.
Yeah.
Okay. That was a cathartic episode for me.
I bet.
Yeah. Did you guys have anything more to add before we wrap up?
I'm so tired.
I'm so sorry that I took up that episode, but it was so worth it for me.
It's cool. I took the first half hour basically. Sorry, Mike.
That is very true. All right. Well, in that case, I will thank you for listening once again to this week's episode of Future Chat. You can head to unwindmedia.com/futurechat and check out past episodes and all the links we talked about today. I will recommend one more time, go check out OneNote if you haven't in a while, because as you can tell, I'm very, very excited about all the improvements it's gotten over the years since I last tried it. See you next week.
Ciao.
This goes down in history as my new favorite.
What does? Oh, this show?
Yeah.
I'm so tired. I managed to actually adjust my schedule this week. And so this is the earliest I've been up since this time last week.
Wow.
Yep.
That's good.